Welcome to Reconnecting with Wholeness, the podcast where we dive deep into the messy, beautiful journey of coming home to yourself. I'm your host, Paige, and together we'll gently question everything, bringing you deeper into self-awareness, acceptance, and trust. So take a breath, settle in, and let's begin. Welcome back to Reconnecting with Wholeness. I am your host, Paige, and today we are talking all about discernment. This was very thought out that it would be my first actual dive-in episode of this season. Reconnection starts with you. I believe that discernment is the first and foremost necessary thing that we as individuals need. We need to trust. Reconnecting with that discernment then leads into what decisions we make, who we work with, all sorts of other things kind of flow from this discernment, or at least should, right? There's a lot of times, especially in today's day and age, where we get overly analytical about things, and I think that logic absolutely is a wonderful tool. Everybody should have it, but I also recognize that internal kind of discernment of, even if logic says this is the next best thing, right? Who maybe feels the best, right? And so if we want to kind of break this down, logic would say you need to go to a doctor. That discernment piece is, what doctor are you going to use, right? Now, we can absolutely talk about qualifications and all of those types of things. So there's still logic associated there, but ultimately, you have to discern for yourself what makes that doctor what it is that you're looking for. I'll use a real but less important decision. Back in 2020 and in 2019, beginning of 2020, I knew that I felt called to do sound healing, and that was something I really wanted to work with. And so I began researching places that did sound healing courses. And it took me really 2 years to find one. I had found one before that I liked. It was in Massachusetts, and I was like, I think that this might be the one. And then sure enough, due to the pandemic, they had canceled their program that was supposed to be happening in March. I think it was a weekend program. But I looked into, I don't know, probably 50 sound healing programs anyway at the time, over the course of the years, if not more than that. And some did just singing bowls. Typically it was crystal singing bowls. Some did wide variety of instruments. Some were online, some did a hybrid, but I really was looking for something that was in person, that offered an array of instruments, so that way I could see and sense and feel which ones felt called. And I really enjoyed and was kind of looking for something that went a little more of the shamanic route, as opposed to, I don't want to say just science, but something that offered just crystal bowls. That if you just offered one instrument, it wasn't appealing to me. It doesn't mean that that's wrong. It just wasn't what I was looking for at the time. And so finally, 2 years later, I found this program, and it was beautiful. And we had, literally just so many instruments were there, between native flutes and tuning forks and chimes, gongs, drums, yes, crystal bowls, yes, Himalayan singing bowls. They had the crystal pyramids. Those are cool. They just had pretty much, Surety Box. I don't think they had a didgeridoo, but pretty much everything else except for that, if you can think about it, they probably had it there. And it was amazing, and I loved it. And I'm so glad that that was my experience, because something, Koshi chimes, for example, I know I'm probably boring some of you guys who don't know, who've never been to like a sound bath, and don't geek out about this stuff the way that I do, but Koshi chimes, for example, when I just listened to them, I was like, nah, I don't love that. But then when you incorporate it into a sound bath, I was like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. So it really allowed for this deeper experience, right? To understand kind of when and how and where I would use certain things or what resonated with me. And I think discernment is just that, right? It's this listening to your own inner wisdom, your what is it that you're looking for? What is it that I think a lot of times we base discernment as kind of like an intuitive thing. I don't know that it always is, but it definitely sometimes is, right? It's kind of that like, I don't know, something just like feels off about that person versus like, wow, their energy is just really good. But it can go even beyond that. And I've seen this happen with like a couple of clients of mine where we've talked about kind of this self-trust piece. And I think too, this is why discernment is so important, is because discernment, when we go against that, we break our own self-trust. And so I've talked to some clients, I've experienced the same thing, where initially maybe an opportunity or a situation, a person is presented, and that doesn't feel good. And then we allow other people to talk us out of that first decision, and maybe that's into something else, right? Maybe that's into dating that person or into taking that job, and that talking into, right? We go against our own discernment, and sometimes it doesn't plan out, right? Sometimes it pans out in a really bad way, and then later on we're like, I knew it. Like, I really wish I would have just continued to listen, that I would have stood my ground, right? So that's what I'm encouraging you all to do. And that can look different in a lot of ways. But since I'm talking about being here on this podcast, I'm going to talk about a lot of topics, and I'm going to say a lot of things. And I am just a person. I am just a human. I will say things that you will disagree with, that you don't resonate with, that you maybe don't feel are true, and that's okay. My call here to you is to use your discernment. My next call is to say, is there a way that you can take some of the things that I say here, even if it's slightly different, and tailor it to you? I had this analogy come to me the other day when I was thinking about this episode, and I was thinking it's kind of like if I'm selling clothes. I am not selling clothes, but if I was, right, think about each episode as like a shirt, and some of these shirts aren't going to fit you, and some of them maybe you're like, yeah, like mostly fits, but I just need it hemmed a little bit, or it needs to like be brought in here, and then it would be like a perfect fit. Great, do that. I just recently got finished with a book called Calling in the One by Catherine Woodward Thomas. And I was doing it because a friend of mine had it, and she was doing it. And I was like, cool, I want to support you. Also, I think that anytime we talk about calling in love, it's helpful and advantageous. I think we all have a capacity, have a ability to increase our capacity there when it comes to love. And also, I was like, maybe I can take this and use it and apply it towards my business and maybe calling in clients. And so I took the book and kind of tweaked it for what I felt that I wanted to use it for. And the friend of mine who did it, at one point we were doing an exercise, and I think the exercise was something along the lines of name 3 things that irritate you. And my friend sent me a text and she was like, do people really have 3 things that irritate them? And I was like, yeah, me, myself, and I. And then I got more serious. But I also had said, if the word irritate doesn't resonate with you, then try something different, right? Like, are you frustrated? What maybe bothers you? What triggers you? I didn't go over that many words, but, right, like, if I say something and you're hung up on one word, right? Can you take out that word and put something else in there that does more resonate with you? So that way you I don't want to say understand, but still have something to receive, right? I think that a lot of times we have these moments where we get hung up on a small part, and then miss out on the bigger nugget that's there. So I'm going to use that situation as like one aspect, right? Can you do that? If the answer is yes, great, do that, right? Change that word. And then there are other times where we just fundamentally don't agree with what somebody else is saying. And I'm inviting you to, when you have something that does inevitably trigger you or cause friction or whatever word it is that you want to put in there, go through like 3 different questions, right? 1, am I bothered because there's some level of truth that I don't want to face? 2, can I put in a different word to have this resonate? And 3, is there an underlying belief that I disagree with? So again, to reference the book that I just did, there was an exercise, and the whole lesson leading up to the exercise was great. The lesson was great. I completely agreed with it, and I'm like, yes, we should be doing that. And then she gets to the exercise, and her verbiage was one in which I just fundamentally disagree so strongly that I was like, I cannot do this exercise. I can't do it. I can't even think of a way right now to change the verbiage in a way that empowers me to do this. And so I just skipped the lesson altogether. And I want you to understand as a listener that it's fine for you to do that. If you are like, nope, I just fundamentally disagree with Paige and wherever it is that she's coming from, that's okay. Just skip that. You don't have to resonate with anything or everything that I say. My hope though is that I can spark some sort of thought-provoking manner that shifts what you think, and maybe opens you up just a little bit more. So if you don't already feel like you have strong discernment, if you don't already feel like you have some sort of space that you create to say what am I looking for here, I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to really strengthen that discernment. And I think, if at all possible, use small things, right? We don't have to talk about it in terms of monumental things as far as where do we want to live or what job do you want to have, right? It can be small things, right? Do you feel comfortable with your doctor currently? Do you feel comfortable with your dentist? Can you, all sorts of things, right? I have been in the process of wanting to cut and color my hair, and so it's been okay, who is the best person to do the thing that I want to. That to me comes into a level of discernment, and I say that because the last time I got my hair colored, I was not happy. And so again, I know that that's kind of a silly thing, right? But coming into what does discernment mean for you? What does it look like? And then how do I enable that, right? For me, there is a level of, especially when I get triggered, feels like such a strong word, but when like friction appears in my life, when I recognize that something is bothering me maybe more than it should, right, or what I feel like it should, then I do use, okay, well, what's here? What's underneath? And for me, discernment a lot of times appears as kind of like this aha moment. And I'll talk about this probably a little more next week. We're gonna dive into decisions. But I lean into my human design. If you're not familiar with human design, I will definitely talk about it in our next episode. But I have a sacral authority, and so that discernment, like, it comes pretty much right away. If for you discernment comes from like sleeping on it or thinking about it for a day, then do that. Right? It's all gonna look different because we as people are built differently. We experience life differently. We have different thoughts. My only caution to you when it comes to discernment is to not over discern or over analyze, because I do think that a lot of times that does more damage than good, and we end up kind of like spinning our wheels. I know it's happened to me, and my guides are like, Paige, bring it back. Like, bring it back to basics. Come all the way back to basics. What did you originally want to do? What did you originally say? Let's just reconnect from the beginning and take this like kind of new thoughts and everything else that you've had and kind of bring this forward, and what resonates and what doesn't. So when you you do overanalyze or overcomplicate things, bring it back to basics. And again, if that's like an instinctive discernment, then great, lean into that, use that. If it's more of a, I'm going to sleep on this and see how I feel about it tomorrow, great, do that, lean into that. And if it's, somewhere in between or longer, then do that too. And with that, I feel good. I feel complete. So I hope that you all have a very discerning week ahead of you, and you're able to really lean into that inner wisdom that you already have, that you already carry. Have a great week. Thanks for joining me today on Reconnecting with Wholeness. I invite you to take what resonated and explore how it shows up in your own life. Keep in mind, even the smallest shifts can spark transformation. If today's episode felt valuable for you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share it, leave a review, or connect with me on social media. Until next time, keep exploring, keep feeling, and keep reconnecting with the wholeness that's already within you. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.